My husband and I have been happily married for over 4 years, and our journey together has been going on for 7 years. He is truly the perfect partner, the embodiment of my most cherished dreams of a man, and our life together turned out just fine. All the members of my large and friendly Mexican family welcomed him with open arms. His charm, politeness, and respectful behavior won everyone over from the very beginning, without arousing a shadow of doubt or dislike from anyone. This fact only strengthened my feelings for him, because he was able to become an integral part not only of my life, but also of my family. We are a really great team. Our conflicts are extremely rare, and even at such moments we try to find a compromise. However, the only thing that sometimes becomes a source of tension in our relationship is his mother. Unlike my extended family, my husband's family is much smaller. Besides his parents, he also has a sister who got married last year. His parents are conservative Christians from a small town, and it is his mother, Harper, who proves to be the greatest challenge for me. She is overprotective of her son, trying to control many aspects of his life, especially insisting that holidays always take place with their family. If her wishes are not taken into account, she begins to create tension and drama, which sometimes makes communication with her extremely difficult. When I first met his family, his father William immediately made a pleasant impression on me with his calmness and reasonableness. My husband's sister, who returned home after graduating from college just 4 years ago, quickly became close to me, and we began to communicate like sisters. However, it was different with his mother. Our communication turned out to be much more difficult. When I told him that I work as an environmental consultant specializing in the conservation of marine ecosystems, his father was impressed and immediately expressed support for my professional aspirations. Harper just frowned and said nothing. Later, I found out from William that Harper was against our relationship from the very beginning. She put pressure on my husband, trying to convince him to end our relationship, as she did not approve of my professional choice. Her old-fashioned expectations were that her son's wife should be a housewife, and my passion for a career was unacceptable to her. However, despite the pressure from my mother, my husband always stayed by my side. He appreciated my professional ambitions and supported me in all my endeavors. Even after I found out about his mother's disapproval, I tried not to attach much importance to it. I thought that time and communication would help overcome her bias. However, as our relationship with my husband strengthened and moved to a new level, her attitude towards me only worsened. Harper was increasingly making snide remarks that concerned not only my profession, but also my behavior in general. She insisted that a good wife should put housekeeping first, emphasizing that her vision of family life was rooted in outdated ideas that a woman should wait for her husband to return from work, maintaining comfort and order. Often her words were so thinly veiled that at first I perceived them as sarcastic jokes or inappropriate comments that could be ignored. But it soon became clear that Harper was completely serious. One evening at dinner, she spoke bluntly about her longing for the times when gender roles in the family were rigidly divided, women were exclusively engaged in the house, and men were breadwinners and protectors. My husband, knowing full well what she was getting at, did not let her develop this topic. He firmly and calmly noted that times have changed, and he is proud that his wife is not only an excellent hostess, but also a full-fledged partner who makes an equal contribution to their life together, both financially and in everyday terms. However, Harper was not reassured by my husband's words. On the contrary, she was clearly upset, and her tone became more accusatory. She began to speak louder and louder, claiming that her opinion was the truth that she had to convey for the sake of her son's well-being. The atmosphere at the table became tense, and even William's attempts, who always tried to keep peace and order in the family, to defuse the situation, were unsuccessful. He advised his wife to calm down, but she only aggravated the conflict by demonstrating her dissatisfaction with my husband and my modern views on family life. When I realized that this dinner had turned into a battlefield for traditional principles, I quietly got up from the table and asked my husband to take me home. Without further ado, He agreed and, after exchanging a disappointed look with his mother, we left their house. Later, when William called to try to smooth things over, I was forced to firmly state that Harper's interference in our relationship and her outdated views could no longer be ignored. William apologized on behalf of his wife, but I wasn't ready to just forgive it and move on as if nothing had happened. My husband fully supported me in this matter and gave my mother an ultimatum: if she does not sincerely apologize and does not stop her attempts to impose her values, he will be forced to break off all relations with her. This step seems to have proved decisive. Harper apologized, and although I accepted them, deep down I knew that these words would not be able to change her views and habits. And indeed, after a while, the old problems resurfaced. It seemed that as soon as my husband and I began to establish our family life, Harper found a new reason for discontent. One of those moments was my participation in a research expedition that lasted several weeks shortly after we got married. At that time, Harper called me and asked who would look after the house and take care of her son while I was on the expedition. Her questions were so intrusive and disturbing that, confused, I turned on the speakerphone so that my husband could hear everything she was saying. When I asked her to clarify her concerns, she was quick to accuse me of immaturity and insisted that I immediately abandon my professional plans and focus more on supporting her son. My husband quickly intervened, his voice sounding firm and confident. He made it clear that he is fully capable of taking care of himself, and that we are equal partners who share all responsibilities together. These words did not calm Harper. On the contrary, she was even more upset by this answer. She exclaimed that our marriage was doomed to fail if I couldn't learn how to be a real wife. Her rude and disparaging words caused my husband obvious irritation. He briefly but clearly told her to mind her own business, and then cut the conversation short. This incident reminded me of her behavior during our engagement, when Harper was already showing her displeasure with our decisions, especially after she found out that we were planning a small wedding. Since my family is large and we were going to move into our own accommodation soon, we decided to hold a modest celebration with a limited number of guests. We planned to organize a larger celebration for all the relatives later. However, Harper was deeply disappointed with our choice. She wanted to invite all her old friends whom she had not seen for many years, considering our wedding as an opportunity to reunite. When my husband politely asked if she was ready to cover the expenses for these guests, Harper was offended. She said that he, as her son, should be ashamed to even suggest something like that. My husband and I stood our ground, clearly stating that the wedding would remain small, and that any uninvited guest she decided to bring would be her personal financial responsibility. Harper was extremely unhappy, but she couldn't change our plans. At the wedding itself, she did not miss the opportunity to sharply criticize me, especially she did not like my choice of wedding dress. However, I decided to ignore her complaints and focus on enjoying this important day without letting her negativity destroy my memories. Fortunately, my sister-in-law Olivia, understanding the tension of the situation, did her best to keep Harper away from me throughout the event. Her support was invaluable, and thanks to this, I was able to keep calm and joy on our holiday. A year passed, and in mid-April we received wonderful news. I was pregnant, which brought us great joy. But even during this joyful period, our lives could not do without Harper's intervention. When it came time for the baby's sex disclosure party, Harper was furious to learn that she had not organized the event. She showed up on our doorstep with accusations, furiously claiming that I was deliberately distancing her from her future grandson, and insisted that my husband take more control of the situation so that she could be more involved in my pregnancy. Her harsh tone and emotional pressure caused my husband to be outraged. He asked her to leave our house, warning that her behavior could lead to her being permanently cut off from our child's life. Despite her tears and protests that she only wanted the best for her family, she eventually left. This incident has left a deep mark on our relationship with Harper. After this incident, William and Olivia expressed deep concern about Harper's behavior. Especially Olivia, shocked by the way her mother behaved, begged me to rest as much as possible and avoid stress. However, this incident did not end Harper's domineering behavior. During the holiday season, when my husband informed her that we would not be able to come for Christmas due to my inability to travel long distances, Harper became furious. She accused him of distancing himself from his family and abruptly hung up the phone when he did not give in to her demands. We thought we had made the final decision, but to our surprise, a week later she wrote a letter insisting that we come to her house for the holiday. When my husband reminded my mother of our previous conversation, Harper called again without holding back her emotions. She furiously accused me of allegedly keeping her son away from his family and demanded that he control his woman. Each time her attempts to impose her opinion and manipulate became more and more obvious, and it was already difficult for me to remain indifferent. Harper's behavior increasingly resembled toxic control, and I decided to openly discuss this with my husband and Olivia. They both admitted that the situation was really out of control. My husband supported me, realizing that mother's interference in our lives goes beyond all bounds, and Olivia expressed her concern about how mother undermines our family peace. However, before we could properly discuss this problem, an unexpected thing happened. At the 29th week, I went into premature labor. Our son was born by emergency cesarean section, and his birth at 30 weeks was an unexpected and exciting event. My husband and I were so busy taking care of the baby's health and my recovery that we just couldn't physically report the birth right away. When we were finally able to share the news in our family group chat, joyful messages and congratulations began to flow. However, Harper's reaction was very different. She was outraged that she was not allowed into the delivery room, although it was clear in advance that this was not part of my plans. Bombarding us with irritated messages, Harper demanded explanations and even claimed that she needed to be there at such an important moment. I chose not to respond to her unfounded claims, focusing on caring for our newborn. But her intervention did not end there. Harper contacted my husband again, this time to express her displeasure about our son's name. She said it sounded too Mexican and suggested changing it or at least using it as a middle name. Despite her persistence and disappointment, my husband and I remained true to our choice. Harper, however, continued to express her dissatisfaction, even went so far as to meet our son and start calling him by another name that she had come up with. She insisted that it was her special nickname for her grandson, but my husband quickly stopped her attempts and demanded that she respect the name we had chosen. In addition, Harper openly condemned my decision to breastfeed my son, claiming that it limited her time with the child. She even suggested that I switch to artificial feeding so that she would have more opportunity to spend time with her grandson. In response, my mother, who helped me during that period, gently explained to Harper all the benefits of breastfeeding for the health of a newborn. However, Harper remained adamant, continuing to claim that it was unfair to her. These constant attempts at control and criticism exhausted me. The tension culminated when Harper insisted on a lunch meeting, claiming that she needed to discuss something urgent. I tried to avoid this meeting for a long time, but in the end I agreed. At lunch, after exchanging polite phrases, she suddenly asked who would be our son's godfather. I knew her reaction might be negative, but I still answered honestly that Olivia and I had decided to be godparents to each other's children. Harper was deeply shocked by this news. She burst into tears right in the restaurant and loudly expressed her dissatisfaction with this decision. In her eyes, as a grandmother, she had the right to be a godmother and believed that only she could be entrusted with such responsibility. But despite her emotional protest, I calmly but firmly said that the decision was final, and if she needed to discuss it further, she could talk to my husband. Later, I shared this situation with Olivia, who was also upset by her mother's behavior. She was upset that Harper didn't recognize her as an important figure in our son's life. My husband was also amazed by his mother's irrationality and became increasingly concerned about her obsessive behavior, which was destroying family relationships. Last week, tensions reached a peak. Olivia gave birth to her daughter and asked me to be present at the birth to support her at this moment. I gladly agreed and was with her in the delivery room while my husband and my mother took care of our son at home. After giving birth, when her boyfriend came to support Olivia, I returned home to relax and spend time with our son. During these hours, I received several calls from Harper, but, tired and emotionally exhausted, I decided not to answer and focus on taking care of my family. Later that evening, my husband returned from Olivia's. I expected to hear the usual news about my niece, but he told me something that struck me. Olivia, exhausted by the constant control and pressure from her mother, decided to break off all contact with her. This bold step, which she had not dared to take for many years, turned out to be decisive. When Harper unexpectedly arrived at the hospital without notifying anyone in advance, Olivia had already instructed the nurses not to let her in and allowed only William to see the newborn. For Olivia, this was necessary to prevent any possibility that Harper's inappropriate behavior would have a negative impact on her emotional state at such an important moment. I was stunned to learn about Olivia's decision, but at the same time I felt deeply supported. This act was a kind of turning point, evidence that even those who had been under Harper's influence for the longest time began to realize her toxic effects. Olivia explained to me that her decision was largely due to the way she saw me suffering from her mother's pressure over all these years. Now, as a mother, Olivia has decided to protect her daughter from the same mistakes and avoid Harper having a devastating impact on her family. Gradually, we came to realize that Harper had deprived herself of the opportunity to be a part of her granddaughter's life by her own actions. It was a painful lesson for her. Her desire to control everything and insist on her own turned into complete isolation. She could no longer participate in the important moments of her granddaughter's life, whom she was so eager to see. Now that I was thinking about it, the question of whether we should also end our relationship with Harper became more and more urgent. On the one hand, completely excluding her from our lives seemed like a cruel step, but on the other hand, it was probably necessary for our mental balance. We could no longer ignore the possibility that her behavior would begin to harm our son, causing him the same suffering that we had already experienced. It was a difficult realization, especially for my husband, who grew up in an atmosphere of constant control and pressure. It was only when his mother's behavior began to directly affect me and our family that he was able to realize the depth of her toxicity. However, despite all the difficulties, my husband remained my mainstay. He was incredibly supportive and always protected me, as well as our new family, throughout all these trials. After much discussion, we came to the decision that for our well-being and peace in the house, we would have to set strict boundaries with Harper. Maintaining a distance has become an important and conscious step for us. We realize that our happiness and inner peace are much more important than trying to please her ever-changing demands. Although the decision was not easy, many of our loved ones, including Olivia and William, supported us, realizing that this step is necessary for our family well-being. We organized a group video call with Olivia and William to discuss our next steps. Both of them fully supported our decision, understanding the importance of protecting peace and harmony in our families. Now all that remained was to tell Harper about it. My husband decided to have a difficult conversation with his mother. He called her last night to discuss our intentions. As soon as Harper answered the phone, she immediately began to condemn him for his lack of communication and demanded an immediate meeting with our son. My husband waited patiently for her tirade to end before gently but firmly explaining to her that it was time for him to step in as the protector of our family. Harper, not expecting a trick, suddenly agreed, probably believing that her son was finally showing the strength and control that she had always wanted to see in him. However, her agreement quickly turned into a shock when he stated that his way of protecting us was to break off contact with her forever. At first, Harper was stunned. Perhaps it was difficult for her to comprehend the seriousness of her son's words. However, as the reality of our decision penetrated deeper into her consciousness, her state turned to despair. She began to threaten, saying that nothing could keep her from meeting her grandson. My husband, remaining calm, sternly warned her that any attempt to appear uninvited would end up calling the police on the fact of illegal intrusion. This response seemed to only add fuel to the fire. Harper went on the offensive, accusing me of deliberately destroying their family. But my husband, showing character, stood firmly on my side. He wouldn't let her label me as a loose woman, saying that the decision was entirely his and that Olivia also chose to distance herself for the same reasons. He directly pointed out to his mother her behavior, which became a real problem for everyone. This argument only increased Harper's fury. She continued to bring accusations against me, saying that I was brainwashing her family, alienating her children, and depriving her of the role of a grandson. My husband did not hide his disappointment. He was on edge, finally telling her that if she was looking for someone to blame, then she should look inside herself and think about her actions. He reminded her that her bitterness and discriminatory attitude had destroyed the connection with everyone around her, that her resentment had become unbearable for everyone who was around. In the end, he brought the conversation to its logical conclusion. After another emotional outburst from Harper, he blocked her number. This step was difficult for him, but vital for our common well-being. Against this background, it was as if we had opened a new chapter in our family life, where Harper's toxic influence no longer poisoned every day. My husband made a difficult but right decision, and I followed his example by blocking her on my phone as well. We informed our loved ones of our decision and recommended that they also minimize contact with her if necessary. This reality was hard for my husband and Olivia, who had to put up with the lack of support from their mother, but on the other hand, it brought relief. We no longer had to constantly be on guard and endure her harsh and destructive antics. It's been 3 months since the breakup, and I'm happy to say that our son is thriving. Olivia and I are getting closer and closer. Our children often play together, and it brings me sincere joy to see them build their first friendships. I hope that over the years they will become best friends, sharing the happiest moments of their lives with each other. In brighter news, Olivia is preparing for the wedding with the father of her child, and we are all looking forward to this event. The very thought of a future celebration fills us all with joy and anticipation of a new stage in their life together. In the meantime, our position on Harper remains unchanged. We stand firm in our decision to keep our distance, and for those who are worried about our safety, we have taken precautions. We installed security cameras and changed the locks to minimize the possibility of her unexpected appearance in our house. Given her reputation and the public condemnation of her behavior, it is unlikely that Harper will decide on an open conflict, but nevertheless, we are always ready for any possible scenarios. Despite our clear boundaries, Harper tried to use William as an intermediary. She asked him to help her reunite with her family, hoping for his intervention. However, even William has reached his limit. He expressed his disappointment with her behavior and finally made it clear that he no longer intended to put up with her destructive actions. This conversation seemed to have given her some thought. A few weeks later, Harper, through William, conveyed her desire to apologize for her behavior towards me. But even after this offer of reconciliation, we decided to remain cautious. It was difficult to assess the true sincerity of her words, and despite the offered apologies, we decided not to weaken the distance. We continued to live as before, without her participation. William and other supportive family members visit us and our son regularly, surrounding him with love and care. This gives us confidence that he is growing up in a stable and safe environment, free from unnecessary drama. This order of things, without constant pressure and interference, has become ideal for us, and we intend to follow it further, creating harmony and peace in our lives.